Hello, this is a recording for homework one for 365, 465. Since this is the first homework, I gotta kind of talk about some random stuff that doesn't seem involved in the homework. But I'm making these recordings for each of the homeworks just so you have no questions. Make sure that if you have any questions that you ask them. Note that I do not extend homeworks during the summer. Due to the time frame the homeworks are, it's really, really tight to get these graded back to you within a week, um, especially given my summer plans. So it's very, very, very important that you turn things on time. Very likely the solution will appear automatically at 11:59 on the day it's due. It's everything, all the homeworks in this class will be due on a Monday at 11:59. The homework solution will appear within an hour of that. After that homework solution appears, you're going to get a 0 for the homework, and that is not great for your grade. But it is what it is. Make sure you turn in things on time in this class. All right, so for this assignment, you're going to create a Spring Boot project using Spring Initializer, which you'll use to name your which you'll need to name using your last name followed by your first name followed by homework one. So I would name it Ruth Michael dash homework one. Note, you're going to zip up the project directory and turn it via Blackboard. Couple of things I want to just talk about briefly in advance. Do not use an old version of Spring. It is usually very, very obvious that you're cheating. If you look back at the notes, it says, if the project uses an outdated version of Spring Boot, before the class begins, you will receive a 0. Automatically going to assume it's cheating. Do not do it. So make sure you do create it in this class during this class time frame. Our Spring system will be what we call a movie catalog system, which can allow us to work with movies. You'll need a basic movie object. We'll name it movie, which has the following fields, which is the following type. So it should have an MID, which is a movie ID, a name, a genre, a price, and rating. Obviously, rating implies an audience, G, PG, PG-13, R, and NC-17. That should be obviously a string, but can only contain those strings. Note that genre is the type of movies, for instance, action, romance, comedy, whatever. And it should have an equal methods that uses the movie ID to compare. It says games, but it should be compare movies for equality. Your controller should create 30 movies at random using initialization code similar to what we did developed in class in week 1 and store them in an array list designed to store movies. We use the array list note to manage movies similar to how a database would. We're not actually going to use a database at any point in this course. We're going to fake it by using an array list that's going to be managed in our controller. So the first part of the homework is just to create a controller with the appropriate things. Okay. The second one is going to be get endpoints. Now the get endpoints, we have some simple queries. We want to get all movies, right? We're going to get all movies. There's no, it's going to return an okay no matter what. If there are no movies in the database, it's going to return an empty list. That's fine. But that's your first endpoint. The second endpoint is get a movie with given MID. Now I'm going to let you guys pick the URLs for these. So you're going to be able to pick the URI and how that actually works out. Just be aware that I'm expecting these. I do not want you to use request mapping. I want you to do it like we did in class, just so you're aware. We're actually doing this as a mechanism that we use similar to the way that 2 or 3 corporations that I'm familiar with actually do the work that they do using these tools. So it's very important that we use an industry standard. So we're doing it my way. So use the get mappings. But anyway, get a movie with a given MID. You're going to pass the MID through the path. If the movie with the given MID return it, okay. Use okay. Otherwise, return 4 to 4. That's not found. Get all movies with a given rating. So you're going to give a rating, say G, and that rating has to be given through the path and return all movies for a given rating. Note, if the rating doesn't exist, you're still going to return an empty list, right? So you don't have to worry about, just like for part 1, you don't have to worry about not found and those things. You just return an empty list. Get all movies with a given genre. Genre must be given through the path. Return all movies for a given genre. Same idea. There's very little failure. If it's a genre that doesn't exist, you just return. You simply return the empty list. A couple things that should be pretty obvious I muted myself. That wasn't what I was intending to do. I just want to check the microphone. Um, so what it isn't obvious about 3 and 4 is you have two endpoints that look very similar. You have to distinguish between them using the URL, since both inputs need to be given via URLs. So it's very important that you do that. Part 5 on that, or not part 5, but number 5 in this is get all movies priced between a given range. You're going to be given a low and high values. These must both be given through the path. So you're going to have a way of distinguishing each one of these variables in the path. I recommend putting some separated between them, as we did in class. Again, you're going to return all movies that are priced between the high and low values. There are no errors associated. If there are no movies within those values, then you just return an empty list. Pretty simple. A couple things before we go any further. I didn't talk about this, but I do not wish you to use lambda expressions. As part of this class, we're developing some experience. Since this class doesn't require 250 data structures, we want to develop some experience looping through arrays and so forth. So I really do wish you to loop through the arrays. Do not use lambda expressions, filtering, or those type of things. You'll just be given zeros for that. So don't do it. Now, part 3 and part 4 look alike, and they should. Part 3 is it's a post endpoint, so you're going to be able to add a movie. The movie must be given through the body. No duplicates allowed. If the movie already exists, you return found. That indicates a failure. Only accept valid movies. We must use validation criteria from part 5. You'll see it later. And use hibernate value validation. That means use annotations like we did in class. Do not try to create a method that validates that is going to receive 0 points. Part 4 is an update. Again, the same basic premise, except that movie must already exist. Update the movie given the given movie values. We're only going to accept valid movies. See above, same issue. You're going to report with employee if okay. For instance, you were given a valid movie and the movie already exists. You're going to update it and you're going to report everything's okay. You're going to report a conflict otherwise. Okay, conflict is just not found, right? Ta-da! For delete endpoints, you're going to delete a movie with a given MID. The MID must be given through the path. Movie must exist. You report with the movie if okay, and for otherwise. Don't forget to use, in situations where it says report with movie if okay or report found, I'm looking for response entities there. Okay, don't forget to do that. For the validation of the movie, we want to validate all fields using the following constraints. Movie ID must be present and be a 4-digit number. That should say movie ID. Name, genre, and rating must be present and not empty strings. Price must be a positive number and greater than 0. Greater than 0, not equal to 0, greater than 0. Make sure to have exception handling as necessary. Just copy my code for this part. There's really nothing special to do. Most of you will just take that exception handler and the code that modifies the exception handler and just paste it in your project. That's what I'm looking for you to do. That's why that's why it doesn't require, that's why it's not worth a lot of points to do this part. So for undergraduates, you would stop here if you choose to. Okay. If you're an undergraduate, you would stop here. If you're a graduate student, you have to do the graduate student work. If you're an undergraduate, you may do the work for extra credit, but if you're a graduate student, you must do this work. So for graduate students or for extra credit for undergraduates, you're going to get some additional get endpoints. All this should be in the same controller. It really doesn't make sense to put this in a separate controller. Please don't put it in a separate controller. Create a new object named Studio. 2 fields. It's going to be 2 simple fields, SID and name. It's going to be like a movie studio. In the constructor of your controller, generate 5 studios and put them in a separate list. Use the generative code that we've not generative code that we've already done, but use the stuff do it like we've done it before. In the constructor, create an additional infield for movie named Studio. This will refer to the movie studio's SID and initialize the fields to one of the SIDs already created. This is where we run into immediate problems if you create 2 separate controllers. If you create 2 separate controllers, there's no way to get the SIDs of the other fields. So it's very important that you do this in the same controller. Then create the endpoints necessary to manage studios. We're talking list, delete, update, and put. Your CRUD. Create an endpoint that gets all movies for a given studio name. Studio name must be given to the path, and then we return all movies for a given studio name. Again, I'm expecting you to not use a Lambda expression. Do not use filters. I expect you to loop through the array and grab the things that of certain value. Obviously, remember the name in movies. The SID is what's actually held in a movie. You have to go through the studios, get the name, given the name, get the SID for the name, and then go through the movies to determine which ones should go in the final product. Make sure that you name everything appropriately and that you zip everything appropriately. Take 10 points off total score if you have zip file problems. The project used an outdated version of Spring Boot before the class began. I'm going to give you a 0. Please don't break that rule. If files within the project are named incorrectly, note, I don't name everything, but when I do name things like movie, studio, those type of things, I do expect them to have the specific name. So make sure that when I do tell you to name something, name it that. Make sure not to use Lambda expressions for this homework. If you do, you'll receive a 0 on the homework, no exceptions. If the project doesn't contain sufficient comments, this is kind of a catch-22. If you do something really stupidly complex, you better comment all over it. If you do something fairly simple, a few comments here and there. You'll get a warning if you do something stupidly complex, and hey, I want to see comments in the future. So you won't get punitive damages initially unless it's ridiculous. But just be aware that you should have comments when you're doing something complicated. This is an individual assignment. What you should turn in is should represent your own work. Be cautious of sharing artifacts with other students. Other students might not share your sense of academic honesty and may turn in your work. If they turn in your work, you will receive a 0. No exceptions, no arguments. It doesn't matter if they didn't mean to. You will receive a 0, as is the person that turned it in your work. Both of you will receive a 0. I can't determine who actually did the work, so I'm not going to. If two solutions are too close to each other, they will receive a 0. Be cautious of that. Make sure not to share each other's work. Okay. All right. And that's it for homework 1. If you have any other questions about the homework, please email me. The homework is due on 7/22. In order to get that graded back to you within a week, it's very, very important that you turn that in on time. Otherwise, I will have massive level of difficulties getting that back to you graded in a reasonable time. Note, that is right around the time that your exam is due. And so it's very, very important that you get your homework in on time. All right. Thank you, guys.